Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Anima Season defense matches. The updated defense did pretty well last time, and I was interested to see how it would do with Mirabilis moving back onto the team. Having a second dancer makes the team less vulnerable to isolation, and I also wanted to take the chance to try Gharnef out in Chrom's place. Having a mage with a bit more firepower than Gatekeeper helps split the damage profile between physical and magical, making it harder for a single ranged tank to handle the team. I also updated some skill sets. Laegjarn's performance last Anima season was enough to finally convince me to commit some extra skills to her. Deadeye is an excellent fit, giving her a way to punch through Elemine support while also taking advantage of her absurdly high attack power. Greenfeed's a bit of an experimental pick. It's mostly aimed at disabling Thor support, making it very easy for her to completely shut down enemy specials when combined with Guard. Gharnef also got himself a pulse smoke that, in theory, helps disable hardy fighters for his team. Though, looking back, it probably isn't as necessary without triangle attacks involved. Mirabilis got herself several merges from the Medius banner, and I also gave her Phantom Res to help her dodge Elemines and keep ground orders online for Felix. The rest of the team is the same, using Azura as a multi-purpose dance support to both enable Laegjarn and disable pre-charged specials with Pulse Tie, while Felix and Gatekeeper keep the team relatively safe from ranged hit and run approaches. The defense had another fairly successful week overall, only suffering 2 clean losses along the way. It's good to see results like this, and I'm planning to keep making tweaks going forward. So let's get to the first match. This match was an interesting one to start the week off. They brought a full spectrum of mage threats to their roster, with a bonus week in Season Alina, and in Season Eitri for the green mage and honestly really great Kanto mobility, and Ishtar as a bonus unit and blue mage. Backing that up with Peony is a great way to give them all of the dance support they need to maneuver around the map and keep out of range of the other team, while Elemine's a great way to help shut down things like Hardy Fighter that might normally get in the way of this. The +9 Thor is also a really nice way to just engage on an enemy frontline and then potentially back out if necessary, or just help clean up the enemy team, after Lilina and Eitri and Ishtar crack them open. I think they might have been hoping for Lilina to take down Felix here, but they end up needing to flip Eitri forwards to do it instead.
You shouldn't get in my way.
And while she can do that, it does mean that she gets stopped from Kantoing out of harm's way, and they have to use a dance to move her out instead. Which means they don't get as far away from her front line as they might have liked. So when Gatekeeper moves into harsh command, he gets rallied by Laegjarn, who gets danced, and oh, that's a very, very one-shotted Lilina. Gatekeeper gets danced here and goes after the Peony, but unfortunately he just doesn't quite hit hard enough to one-shot her. And we can't get in range with anyone else, but losing Lilina is enough for them to concede the match and move on. This one was another interesting match. I haven't seen any maxed out Leonese on an offense team before, so this one was really neat to see. She's really impressive and honestly does a great job as a hit and run ranged unit, thanks to her cavalry mobility and the AD Far Trace. And backing her up with Reagan as a Gale Force option is a great way to just help the team maneuver around the map. And with Fjorm on the team as well, it's easy enough for them to at least interfere with anything that might normally be able to catch up to them. They take a turn here just to start moving into position. I don't think they were really expecting Leonie to have problems handling Felix and getting back out. But unfortunately, Felix is a little bit bulky, and while the Brave Bow does let Leonie quad, it also means that he'll hit her back with an Ignis before she can actually land those third and fourth hits. So they end up just trying to have Altina bait Gatekeeper here. And it almost works. The bonus weak stats do a lot for Altina, but they're just not quite enough to punch through him. Which means that Gharnef gets to pull him back to safety, and Felix gets to jump forward and, well, do his usual Felix thing, where he demolishes Altinas.
No, but how?
Even with a defensive kit, it's hard for a Mythic Altina, at least, to punch through him. They decide to keep going from there, and, well, with the Bolt Tower landing on most of the team, it's not so hard for them to start cleaning things up. Taking the Gatekeeper out first means that they don't have to worry about Canto control anymore. And Felix just barely can't survive those first 2 hits. He wouldn't have gotten the Ignis because of the Bolt Tower, but it was pretty close anyway. Reagan. 2 damage. It's just enough, and that's all she needs to finish Saros off. And then Leonie can move in and take down Laegjarn.
This means war.
And that's good enough. Gharnef can move in here though, and, well, that's... Reagan's not surviving that.
Not good enough.
Leaving her in range might not have been something they planned on. Especially when Gharnef can then get danced, and go take down Leonie instead. After. And while Azura is not able to punch through Tethys here, they're pretty much out of options at this point, with only 2 dancers and a Furum to work with. This match was a fun one. It's the first save ball of the week with a Hector, not using Hardy Fighter, but Crafty and Bonfire is actually a really neat way to help him survive a lot of ranged opponents, especially with Thor support to help him out. And the Mustafa for panic support is a very cool touch too, since invisible buffs are becoming a lot more common on defense teams these days, and being able to exploit those and shut them down completely can really help you actually just clear out a defense that might normally be very hard to handle. They move in on the first turn here, but moving Flame forward and breaking a structure does mean that Laegjarn, after rallying, can just move in and pick her off without any problem at all.
Mother, soon.
And while Gatekeeper can't really punch through Hector, Hector also has a hard time actually finishing Gatekeeper off.
Prepare to die.
We don't get in range with the rest of their team, and they do decide to keep going here. Repositioning Thor forwards means that she can go in and take down Gatekeeper.
Stay resolute. I'm ready.
And then they just start moving forward to continue trying to tank the team. Hector isn't going to be able to counterattack Gharnef, though. And when he takes free chip damage like that, it's pretty easy for us to finish him off. Azura actually steps in to get that knockout, which is not intended, but still good to see. And, well, Mustafa's not meant to tank Red Mage on this team.
Stay brave, lads.
Barrier Axe or not. And then Laegjarn can move over and snipe Reagan.
Good enough.
We can't get in range again, but at this point they're down to Laegjarn getting knocked out by Thor. And that's about all they can really get done here. So they concede the match and move on. This match was the first clean loss of the week, and was a great highlight of how easy it is to shut down Laegjarn if you don't have some extra support for her bonuses. Henriette, just with her base kit, does come with Distant Defense 4, and it's honestly a really good way to just turn off a lot of the extra bonuses that defense teams might use. And against someone like Laegjarn specifically, it really helps to just disable the entire weapon and make her a lot easier to handle. Backing her up with Robin as a near save specialist is great. Robin's honestly really good. I haven't used him since his bonus week, but I think even without the extra stats, he does a really good job. Yeah. And sadly, even though Felix can step in first here, without his usual
Here, take this.
multi-phase build, he's not having a very good time with this fight.
To lose control.
And because Henriette gets to turn off Laegjarn's weapon, she doesn't hit anywhere near hard enough to finish the job.
By my flame.
And then the rest of the team can't get in range, so it's easy enough for them to start picking the team apart from there. Thor can get right through Suros without any real problems, and Flowguard does a lot of work. And the color advantage and her natural bulk. And that Gale Force lets her move over and take down Felix before he becomes a problem. And then all they have to do is move everybody in behind, reassemble their save ball, and continue tanking. Gharnef attacking into a mage isn't usually a good idea for him. And it's part of why I actually really like pairing him up with Guinevere on a defense, since
I don't want to lose control.
she covers that weakness really nicely. Azuro's, well, not going to get anything done into a Henriette.
Together, we sing.
That power, never again.
And then Gatekeeper moves in, and, well, isn't really going to get anything done either.
I am holding back.
And with just Mirabilis left, it's very easy for them to just start moving in to close out the match. This match was one that really started me thinking about alternative bonuses I could give to Laegjarn to help keep her weapon online, even against Distant Defense 4, or other buff-canceling options like Panic. And while I didn't end up updating the team mid-week, I did shuffle things around a little bit for the next season.
Surprise, your dinner.
This match was a neat way to rebound, especially after the last match had me wishing that Guinevere was on the Anima season to help partner with Gharnef. I do think she's still a really great offense team unit, since she can handle a lot of the common ranged threats that defense teams like to use, without really having any problems at all. Mia's a neat touch too. Disarm Trap lets her get into all of the hard-to-reach places on maps and pick off a target that might cause Guinevere any issues before things get going. And they decide to just try to bait Gatekeeper right away, counting on the effective damage to make sure that Guinevere handles him. Unfortunately though, Gatekeeper is very bulky, and together with color advantage and the follow-up denial, means that he does get to survive this counterattack from Guinevere. And like before, that means Gharnef can pull him back to safety and let Felix jump in to finish the job. And while they did isolate our dance trap, losing Guinevere is enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match was a fun one to see. They actually brought two different Fjorms to their offense team. I've actually seen quite a few of the isolation-based Fjorms this week. It's interesting, and I think we might end up seeing a big resurgence of her popularity after she gets her refined next month. And it's also pretty rare to see a near-save Hector instead of the far-save variety. I do think he makes an excellent near-save user, especially if you replace his default A-skill with something else to focus more on the melee side of things. And Ascended Fjorm, as usual, is a great far-save option as well. They take a turn here just to clear its structures and move into position. They don't isolate Laegjarn and Azura here, choosing to isolate Mirabilis instead. And I think part of that is because of the really fortunate placement they had on their tactics room. Because it actually gravities Gatekeeper here, they don't have to worry about Laegjarn rallying forward and then getting danced. Since Gatekeeper's not actually in range to attack until after he uses his action. So Gharnef just moves in to attack Fjorm instead. And because she gets to recharge this Ice Mirror, he can't quite punch through her. But he does get to do a significant chunk of damage to her, and she can't knock him out on the counterattack. Gatekeeper, well, he can't actually knock anything out, but doing this much damage to Fjorm is actually fairly important, since it means that she has a harder time actually isolating anything on the following turn. Theros, sadly, doesn't really get to accomplish much by attacking into Hector.
Prepare to die!
Although she does just barely manage to survive him. They do get a really nice bolt tower hit here, and use his turn to just start cleaning things up. Fjorm can recharge her Ice Mirror just by finishing Ceres off, and while she can't quite finish Gharnef off on her own, Reagan can move in and do that for her. I think they might have forgotten, though, about Gatekeeper's Kanto control, which makes it a lot harder for her to actually get back out of that fight. And from here, well, Azura's Pulse Tie kicks in and disables Fjorm's Ice Mirror. And while Laegjarn doesn't actually have any buffs to work with, and that means she can't actually knock Fjorm out there, it does mean that Azura can step in and finish the job. And once she's danced, she finds a much easier target to finish off in Plumeria. Felix steps in and hits Reagan. Can't quite finish her off here. But Gatekeeper can step backwards and do that for him.
Not good enough.
And with those members of their team down, it's enough for them to concede the match. This match was a really fun one to see. I was not expecting to be visited by a maxed out bonus week Kana like this. He's honestly just so impressive. The Unity Null follow-up and Speed Smoke is a great combo for him, especially with the post-combat healing that his weapon offers. And as long as he has a good far save tank to back him up, he seems basically impossible to crack as a melee specialist. The Caden's a good support for them too, especially with his updated Refine, and giving them both guard and a pile of extra stats in combat to work with. They take a turn just moving into position here to wait things out a little bit and make sure that they get things in the right spot, and then move Kana in to be the bait unit. Sadly for Kana, while he might be uncrackable, Fjorm isn't. And this time Laegjarn gets her rally trapped fire, and takes her down without too much of a problem. Kana, though, is pretty much fine here. Gatekeeper's able to do some damage to him, but that's not going to stick, thanks to the post-combat healing. And when Sarah steps in, she's not going to survive this fight.
We won't give up.
The rest of the team can't get in range to really do much, although we do get to do the drawback into Felix jumping over Gatekeeper, but that's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match went back to more of a classic save ball, with a first save Hector nearly maxed out. He's missing some Dragon Flowers, but even with that he's really impressive. And a near save at an Ascended Idun. They're very strong together, honestly, or just individually, and seeing this array of plus 10 mythics on their team was just really impressive too. A bit sad that they didn't decide to use Altina as more of a carry in her bonus week, but it's fair. She can be a little tricky to use. It is interesting though to see the Deflect Missile on Hector instead of Deflect Magic. I do think Deflect Magic is a bit more consistent overall, since Missile only works on the archers and daggers that you might run into, and those archers and daggers might also be using a Deadeye, or Lethality, which would punch right through that anyway. They get in here on the first turn again, and, a lot like a team earlier this week, opt to open up that corner in the bottom right, which lets Laegjarn just attack into Hector and take him down, since she can attack the Plumeria, which was out of range of Elamine's damage reduction area. Gatekeeper doesn't get to do anything to Ashura here, but he does survive her. And while the rest of the team doesn't make it into range, losing Hector's enough for them to surrender and move on. This match was the second clean loss of the week, and featured a fully maxed out Brave Hector, complete with Hardy Fighter and Warding Breath, who's also being backed up by an equally maxed out Brave Edelgard as his near save option. They're a really impressive save tank pair, and combined with the Elamine on their team, I can't see this team having issues clearing just about any map they run into. The Hardy bearing Ashura is a neat idea as well, and it's a good way to just help them punch through anything that's giving them too much trouble, if Thor and save farmers can't handle it. Having the 2 breath seals does feel a little bit redundant, since they do have Thor support, and usually you wouldn't actually bother running the breaths as well as Thor. But it does help them out quite a bit here, since Laegjarn is using a green dual skill to disable that Thor. Sadly, it's not quite enough for her to punch through this Hector. Even though she does get a clean Deadeye on him, he's just barely bulky enough to survive it anyway. And well, once Laegjarn has used her actions, the rest of the team isn't really going to be able to punch through him. Yep. And from there it's easy enough for them to start cleaning the field. Bonfire lets Thor punch through Gatekeeper, and they can start healing Hector. He did get a little bit dented by that Laegjarn. But once Edelgard gets smited in to take Laegjarn out, there's really nothing that's going to threaten Hector from here. Even if he doesn't get to counterattack. And God, his Zeke is disabled again. Yeah. Edelgard into Ceres doesn't really work so well. Although, again, Gharnef's turn 3 does mean that everyone gets to attack pretty safely here. Safely doesn't mean effectively, and when all's said and done, they can survive this without too many issues. And with the second round of threat out of the way, they can start carving their way through the rest of the team, after healing Hector some more. Gharnef does not have a good time attacking into Hector. Laegjarn's the one who's meant to be able to do that, but just didn't quite manage it this time. The Glimmer does get to do some damage, but the triangle disadvantage she's fighting through is a little too much. And now that Edelgard can actually counterattack again, Ceres is not surviving this. And neither is Felix. And with just Gharnef and Mirabilis left to worry about, and they're not going to have any issues closing out the match.
You can't stop me.
Altina can pick up that pot, and then they just move Edelgard onto the defense tile. Not that she needs it to handle a Mirabilis.
I'll cut my own path.
And they can close out the match from there. This match was a bit unfortunate to see on the heels of the last one. They do have a pretty capable team that they brought to this, with a fallen Edelgard backed up by Nifl. And Lilina is a great nuclear option to handle anything that Edelgard might not quite want to tank. The first save is a good way to help Edelgard keep her support allies safe, and yeah, having Nifl available means that she never actually loses that damage reduction on the first hit, which is a really good way to make sure that she survives a lot more than she might normally. They move in right away here and take their shot, but Laegjarn does actually survive Edelgard, thanks to Guard. And while we don't get the Deadeye there, she does get danced, which lets her sneak in and again take advantage of this corner that got opened up a little more than they might have wanted to. Gharnef can move in here and attack Edelgard safely, but he's not going to threaten her very much, especially without a way to punch through that follow-up denial. And neither is Felix. He's not having a good time with that fight. They decide to keep pushing on with this and close out the match from there. While Edelgard doesn't quite finish Laegjarn off, it gets her low enough that Elamine can finish the job. And then Edelgard can use that charged up bonfire to move over and take a chunk out of Zeros.
Perish.
And all they have to do at that point is back up. Far save means that they don't really have to worry about anything except Edelgard getting attacked. And she's not going to be too worried about anything that's left on the team. Fatal Smoke might actually be a fun option for Gharnef in Anima weeks. But overall, I think he's just found a better home over in Dark Seasons. Oh. Then we just close things out with Gatekeeper, who,
Perish.
well, like Felix and Cirrus, is not having a good time with that fight. Although he does get to survive the bonfire. And then the Lilina afterwards, since the Pulse Smoke did at least disable that special. But that's about as far as he gets. Attacking into Gharnef is a bit of an odd choice there, since he's not going to get knocked out by this, and he does get to keep disabling this bonfire after every combat. But it's not really helping the team actually pull through this fight. Mirabilis does get to sneak in and attack Lilina, but everyone else is ranged, so they can't follow through on that. Azur attacking Edelgard here is a little bit odd, but she does do just enough damage to manage it. And helpfully for Edelgard, that does finally let her charge up another bonfire and take down Mirabilis with it, before moving over and taking a chunk out of Azura, which lets Naga move over and finish the job. Before Lilina moves in and finally takes this Gharnef off the field. Which just leaves Gatekeeper, and he's not going to be able to take down the Edelgard on his own.
Perish.
Even though he does survive yet another bonfire from her. They decide not to bother with the pots and just close out the match here. I'm guessing it was their last match of the week, so that's fair enough. This match was a fun way to close out the week, with another maxed out Brave Edelgard as a near save bodyguard. And she's protecting a much less frequently seen maxed out Winter Nino, who's honestly really cool to see. It's not too often that you see an armored ranged tank that's quite that speedy. And well, their assembly of plus 10 mythics, backing those up, with a few merges missing on Elamine, is really neat to see too. This Nino though is just, she feels really solid, as long as she's not fighting anything too dangerous physically. She is pretty res focused, and a good physical threat can potentially punch through that. They take a turn here just breaking some structures while they move in. They don't bother false starting anything either, so there's that. And once they're ready, they just dance Elamine forward and let her be the point unit for their save ball. Sadly, moving Elamine into this position does mean that they also give Laegjarn a defense tile to work with, and while we don't get a Deadeye, she just hits really, really hard. Gatekeeper can't really do anything to Elamine here, but taking Nino down is already doing a lot for the team. Even though Sarah's moves in and gets herself pretty easily demolished by the Saddle Guard.
You can't stop me.
But we get one last round of the drawback trap to let Felix jump in and snipe that Elamine. And losing those two is enough for them to surrender and move on. It was another fun week of replays overall. It's good to see this defense still doing as well as it is, even if there are some problematic points that I'd like to make sure get handled. I am mostly looking at ways to make sure that Laegjarn's weapon stays online, even if her buffs get cancelled out, along with making her Deadeye just a little bit more consistent against guard effects. I'm also probably, like I mentioned earlier, going to keep Gharnef over in Dark Weeks, at least for now. I think he just works a lot better with triangle attack support and Guinevere backing him up, so it's a better home for him. I do have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon page there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.